on the right hand side. Also, just while Pam's moving, these promises for more devolution, we need to remember this is a parliament which less than a year ago stripped a key renewable energy power from the Scottish Parliament without even so much as informing them until after they'd done it. If we are going to trust these promises on no devolution, more devolution, look to the past and compare to what they've done to what they say they're going to do. The woman at the back?
Yeah, I'm definitely a yes voter, but I want to know a wee bit more about how much this is all going to cost me. I would like to know who's going to set the interest rates once whether we have our own currency or not. And also I'm a bit concerned about how we're going to pay for all these things when we've got an ageing population that's going to live longer. We want to still have free prescriptions, free education. We're a very small country, so what's going to happen to my income tax?
Okay. First of all, we're a very small country. There's 195 countries in the United Nations. There's 85 of them are smaller than Scotland. Half the countries in Europe are the same size or smaller than Scotland. So we're not a small country. 5 million is a perfectly viable size. And I guess if you look at the wealthiest countries in the world, most of them are the same size as Scotland. So 5 million is actually a more successful size in terms of being a rich country than 50 or 60 million. And that's quite clear to see. In terms of the strength of the economy, if you look at the numbers we put up at the start, tax take per person higher in Scotland, GDP per head higher in Scotland. Scotland generates the wealth. Scotland's deficit consistently lower than the UK's deficit. So Scotland is in a better place to afford public services, pensions, welfare, whatever you want to say, investment, whatever, than the rest of the UK is. There's more money in Scotland to do that than there is across the UK as a whole. So does that answer the question? Is there any? If you look at pensions and welfare, social protection is a lower percentage of 38.9% of Scotland's tax take. It's 41.6% of the UK's tax take. Our social protection, welfare and pension spend 14.4% of our GDP, 15.6% of the UK's GDP. So in terms of the amount of money we spend, it's a smaller part of their economy, smaller part of their tax take. We're in a better place to afford pensions, welfare, investment in Scotland. If we can't afford it, they sure can't afford it.
Yep.
Can I just make a comment about things like the free prescriptions and so on? As someone who's spent the last 32 years trying to get people to live longer, I have to say this being talked about as if it's a disaster that people are living longer is really a bit undermining. Maybe I should have just done something else. But people.
That's not what I was implying.
No, I didn't mean you, but in the media talk about, we use this term all the time, that this demographic time bomb and what a disaster it is. Sadly, in actual fact, Scotland doesn't yet have that disaster. When we would get our independence, we will sadly still have a lower percentage of elderly people because we don't yet have the life expectancy. We hope it'll change, but at the point of independence, we will still actually have less. And when people go on about things like free prescriptions, that's just a luxury, we should get rid of that. It's only 10% of the population ever paid for prescriptions. And therefore you had an enormous administration to collect that. What you had back then was people not collecting all of their drugs. What you have down south is they've shown that a third of people are collecting only a third of their drugs. That means they're not taking 2 blood pressure tablets. They're not taking everything their doctor's putting on them. And then something worse happens because they're not taking medication and they're in hospital and they actually cost more. So a lot of these things, like keeping our older people out and about because we're giving them free bus travel, keeping them, all of our people are having free prescriptions and therefore taking medication, is actually just investing in your people. And if you looked at the figures that Ivan put up, that isn't going to mean that your taxes have to come up. There will be things that we don't spend money on. At the moment, the plan is from Westminster not to keep Trident. Trident's dead by 2025. But to replace it at the cost of more than 100 billion. Therefore, nearly 10 billion of that will be our share. we wouldn't have bought these aircraftless carriers that we're doing so at the moment. We wouldn't have invaded Iraq because it was clear that that was not the wishes of the people in the Scottish Parliament, nor the people who were out on the streets. That has cost nearly 60 billion. So there's lots of things we wouldn't be spending money on that means we could actually spend money on looking after each other.
One of the ways of dealing with taxation and income for a government is to broaden the tax base. For example, the Duke of Buccleuch is one of the largest landowners in Scotland. He doesn't pay a penny on all those green fields. If we're independent, as a matter of fact we could do it now, but there hasn't been the courage to do it now. And you bring in a land valuation tax. And those people who've never paid tax on the value of their land start to do so for the first time. Why do you think the Duke of Buccleuch gave money to the No campaign 10 days ago? Because there's a guy called Andy Whitman who has campaigned on the land issue for a long time. And in the rural and highland areas making a lot of progress. And I'll bet all the cash that comes into me this week on the fact that when we have an election for independent parliament, Andy Whitman will have tremendous influence on the manifestos. And the Duke of Buccleuch kens Andy Whitman, and he doesn't want us to become independent. So you widen the base as far as that's concerned. Then you widen the base also. Take Amazon. Where does Amazon pay its taxes? It doesn't pay its taxes in the UK either. It goes to somewhere like Liechtenstein. Now, under the rules of the European Union, we can't do anything about that. That's a fact. But that doesn't mean that we're stupid. I've argued that what you do with Amazon is you say, well, we cannot tax you because you can go wherever you like for your taxation purposes, but for you to operate in Scotland will require a licence. And we'll pitch that licence on the basis of the amount of public services you draw in. How many employees have you got that use our National Health Service? How many roads do you use to take stuff out of Amazon up in Stirling and send it round the country? That's all a licence. So we can overcome this question of these multinationals doing what they like because they can go elsewhere for the taxation. There's different ways to skin that cat, and we can do it. Then let's take Starbucks, who don't pay either. And suppose they say, we don't like what you're doing, we're off. Does that mean that the 3 million cups of coffee and the 3 million buns will not be bought again? It will leave an area in the marketplace for Scottish men and women to set up their Starbucks and pay tax. That's how you do
it. I think this will have to be the last couple of questions.